Greetings, one and all, and welcome to the inaugural Rock Writers Ramble podcast. My name is Mark Urechek, and since this is the first one, let me tell you a bit about myself. I have been a freelance music journalist for the past 15 or so years, based out of Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Some notable stuff that I've done would include mags like Metal Hammer in the metal genre, and Living Blues in the blues genre, to internationally distributed mags with tons and tons of stuff in between, a bunch of different websites, some great sites. My name is searchable in Google, and you should get a whole bunch of results if you search that. So like I said, this is the inaugural Rock Writers Ramble podcast, and the first podcast I'm throwing at you here is an archived piece of work. This is with Tommy Victor of Prong from 2017. This was recorded backstage at the Electric Factory in Philadelphia. I believe Prong opened for Anthrax at this show. And Tommy speaks a whole bunch about his career, about Prong, about his days at CBGB's, and just everything you could possibly want to know. Tommy was a great interview subject and a whole lot of fun to talk to. So, like I said, first one here, but many more to come. Brand new ones are getting lined up as we speak. So, hope you enjoy this one. Thanks so much for listening. Obviously, what I want to start out with, Tommy, is Prong. You know, I don't want to call it a second wind, or maybe I should call it a second wind, because since 2012, really since Carved in the Stone, I mean, you guys have pretty much been very steadily recording, touring. There's, I think 4 records since 2012. Tell me a bit about the quote-unquote resurgence, if you will, of Prong.
Well, you'd have to know a little about what I was doing prior to that. Spent 6 years with Al in ministry, so that took up a lot of my time. And I'm continually playing with Glenn, so I decided I was going to focus on Prong again and really do it. So, which means recording a lot and touring. And we have another record coming out in July 28th, another one, so, I've just been churning them out. It's called 0 Days. But, I don't know, I just felt like, especially when I'm working with ministry, and I was, contributing a lot, with the riffs and stuff, and I'm like, I could just do this with Prong, why, just, and then do the vocals and have my lyrics on it. So, I mean, it's more like a creative thing a lot, too, whereas, I could collaborate with the guys I want to, etc. So it's been cool. I mean, it's a big challenge. I mean, it's been very challenging, but we've been hitting it pretty hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, getting back to the start of everything with Prong, obviously you guys came out of that very eclectic, New York City scene, late 80s.
Yes.
I believe White Zombie was starting up around that time. Mm-hmm. What do you remember most about the heavy scene in New York about that time?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that, and I was just thinking how exciting it was and how cool it was. And what cool is may has been watered down a bit these days. But I mean, back then, we lived in crappy tenement apartments on the Lower East Side, and just lived it, and everyone was on the scene, and we could afford to live down, in the Lower East Side back then. We had an apartment for $350, and no one wanted to live down there, and people were squatting, and that's what the bands were, all there and living it. And it wasn't a suburban scene at all. And it's funny because I was thinking about that. Is we were essentially a Manhattan band, we were a Lower East Side band, going to play in L'Amour's in Brooklyn or something was that was an alien country to us. And there was a lot of bands on the scene, you could definitely include Rob Zombie and White Zombie. They were out before us actually, and then Helmet, and they came on a little bit around the same time as Prong, and there was just a lot of those bands and then there was bands like Rat Rat There's some of other groups that were noise New York bands, and Prong sort of took that a little bit, and then we heard some Celtic Frost records, and we're like, well, this is cool, and then we heard some little bit of thrash, and of course the Bad Brains, and we just threw it in this big pot, and that's what it was. And it was exciting. I mean, now it seems like everything's been done.
Sure.
Like there was like this horizon of new opportunity that existed back then.
Yeah. Now you actually ran sound at
Yeah.
CBGB's for a time, right?
Yeah, 4 years. I mean, the first 2 years I was there all the time, and then when Prong started doing more, starting around '89, then I was on the road a lot, but officially till '90. And I mixed like the hardcore matinees for about 4 years. And I ran into these guys on the road. Like this guy's like going, man, and I don't even remember. He goes, man, you used to make I have all these Youth of Today and Straight Ahead off the boards that you made, and they're so awesome. I'm like, well, how did you get those? He's like, you gave them to me. I'm like, I don't even remember. Like I would have been a millionaire if I just saved. I mean, because hardcore, the people are fanatical about those bands. Bold and Judge and Underdog and Breakdown and Rest in Pieces and Straight Ahead again and Token Entry. I mean, all the bands I mixed back then are like legendary now. And it's like, if I was, I was too honest. I should have just made copies of the Off the Boards and just sold them now for hundreds of dollars. But
$500 on eBay.
Exactly, I'm an idiot. So.
Well, now was that still a time when hardcore and metal fans were still kind of not totally jiving, or?
I think they jive more back then.
Really?
Yeah. Now, I mean, metal fans don't get along with each other. It's like there's too many subgroups. It's annoying, and I don't like it. And it's gotten retarded with and there's a couple of guys on this tour that are real metal aficionados, and I'm like, what do you call this? And he goes, this is Swedish death metal, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell that is. It's like, oh, you can tell by the drum patterns and blah blah blah, and I was like, I don't care. It's like back then I could care less. I mean, and a lot of kids were like that back then, where we would go to see the Buzzcocks, and then we go to see Sisters of Mercy, then we go to see the Cro-Mags, then we'd see Carnivore. Like it was just music, and there wasn't all these divisions that much. I mean, even the hardcore kids, maybe they didn't like a lot of the metalisms, which essentially was like solo. I mean, musically solos and anything that stood for mainstream commercial society more. That's where Prong was. We lyrically and aesthetically and attitude, we were definitely a hardcore band, but we started using more metal influences and like alternative rock influences in it. So we thought we were going to get away with it, but eventually what happened with Prong is that it just started annoying everybody, and everyone was just like, who? There was no when all the identity movements started happening, Prong got lost because that scene ended where no one cared about the genres that much, and that's what we were from. So, it sort of never moved in our direction that way.
I was actually going to mention that the first, I'd say maybe first 3 albums especially, they really had that crossover feel. I mean, you guys were getting played on Alternative Nation on MTV back in the day, which was really a testament of how your music really transcended boundaries. I mean, you really can't have that nowadays, can you?
No, I mean it's really. I mean, and it's, again, it's like not now. I mean, I'm not knocking what we've been doing in ways, but like it's gotten to the point where we have to do like thrash metal tours, and that's not really what Prong is entirely, So it's a bit of a struggle that way. I mean, we go over great with thrash audiences, but it's not the entire Prong audience, So, but the alternative scene is bizarre now too, where it's like anything that's a little bit heavy, they're not going to go for. It's very lightweight scene nowadays. So college music doesn't. Back in the day, you could, by being hard, you could sort of cross over or something, and now it doesn't exist. And industrial metal is completely dead. I mean, you have your icons, like Al and 9 Inch Nails, and there's some other, not really anybody else that can get away with doing it anymore. So where are we? We sort of what Prong has been focusing on, which is a tough thing to focus on, is just the quality of the songs. Like we're just, what makes Prong Prong? It's like, well, we don't really care exactly what genre it is, although, there's blistering guitar work and, great drumming and all that stuff on it. But I mean, we're much more song oriented, and we try to get, really good quality songs on record. It's not just guitar, there's not many guitar soloing, and we avoid all the technical extravagances or something. So
Sure.
That's been our answer to everything at the end. It's like a good song is a good song. You can't deny it.
Mm-hmm. And that right there is crossover enough for anybody.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Good analysis or summation of it. Yeah.
Well, I can't let you go, Tommy, without asking you about Glenn, because you're obviously Glenn's longest tenured guitar player that he's ever worked with, which has obviously got to speak to the working musical relationship.
I don't know if as much as a musical relationship, as much as just like a bizarre friendship and mutual respect, and we come from the same. And you talk about what I said earlier. It's a great actual. I could bring back to the early that generation that Glenn was like one of the pioneers of, where he was like, I dig I'm into Gene Pitney and Elvis, and I'm also into Swans, and then and then I'm into the goth music and then some metal, and just threw it all together. It's like the original Danzig is it's a mixture of like doo-wop music, metal, and punk. It's like that's how it was back then. It was just a melting pot, and like we have that. So I guess we do have that mental relationship where we come from that. Glenn, is so Max's Kansas City 70s mentality, and we know those groups that were back then, and we know where it comes from. And then the early real glam rock, which was like Sweet and T-Rex, and this is the stuff we grew up with. When people don't know this stuff anymore, so we do have that music relationship. Glenn writes all the stuff. I don't have any input on the music. My adaptation of like what his and my attitude about the way I attack the guitar, he likes. So it's a blessing. Playing with Glenn is an extraordinary honor to me. Regardless of what anybody the media present him as being, we got along really well, and he's a fair, funny guy, and we have a good time together. So it's like, and I know where he's coming from on a lot of stuff. He's still trying to knock down stuff, and I'm like, dude, like when are you gonna, never. He's just he's a fighter. He's definitely old school as hell. Old real punk attitude. Like you can't. And there's not many people that know even what that is anymore. That's why I said that cool. Rob Zombie talks about that too. And it's like an aesthetic that no one understands anymore. Really. I'm not sounding like an old guy, but it's a bizarre thing. And now everything's online, and no one knows what the lifestyle was.
Mm-hmm. That's really true, because it seems now like a lot of bands, younger bands that are coming up, they're really fighting for an identity, and they'll maybe try to latch onto this, and you'll see them change their image completely for the next record.
I think I know who you're talking about, but I'm not going to get into it. But it's like it's tough out there, and no one's buying records, and it's like I said, everything seems to have been done, and if you're lucky enough to make those changes that relate to something that happened in the past that nobody knows about anymore, then you get lucky. Like I say this with a lot of the hipster groups, it's like, oh my God, that sounds like, like a Jackson Browne song from 1972, and it's like, I know that, but people today don't know that, and it's like, it's a bizarre thing, like, You know, there's a very popular band that is unbelievably popular, and there's sort of a metal band, and they directly borrowed from a group called My Bloody Valentine, which metalheads don't know that much, and I was like, and they became very popular from it, and sort of made a career over like really ripping off this band in its entirety, and it's annoying. To me, it is, and to see these guys get catapulted into being geniuses when all they did was carbon copy somebody else, and nobody knows about it. You know, and then if you say something about it, then you're being bitter. But, you know, I'm not like pointing any fingers at anybody. But there's a lot of groups like that. You know, so you carbon copy and copy something, and you know they could go the other wrong way, where you know it's like, oh, that sounds like, you know, if it's too close. If it's too much in recent history, then you may not be able to get with it. So I advise, in other words, any young bands, I go, find a group from the past that nobody knows about and just rip them off and then throw the dice and see what happens.
That's great. I love that. Well, let me see, kind of in closing with you, I want to try to throw you a curveball here. I don't know if it will be. I don't know if you've thought about this question much, but is there a definitive Tommy Victor musical statement that you've made throughout the years? Anything you could pick from that you could say, you know what, this is it?
I mean, as far as a technical thing, I mean, like, and something I have to be reminded of is when I was a kid, I never played guitar. Like, you know, like Prong is essentially the first band I played guitar in. I played bass in a group, so there's like my musical statement. I mean, it's from a musical thing. It's just like it's completely everything's rhythmic. And, you know, like I was like. You know, and even as a kid, like I listened to like fusion music, you know, progressive rock, punk rock. You know, I would put an Iggy and the Stooges record on, and the next thing I'd listen to was Gentle Giant. You know, so it's like, you know, as a musical statement, I think it's like the power and simplicity and rhythm is one of my statements. But I mean, lyrically, it's been, you know, I make statements, you know, in sort of the way like Elvis Costello did, that really no one knows what the hell I'm talking about, which I love that. It's sort of like, you know, and a lot of what the songs really mean, people sometimes are alarmed at, you know. And I try to cover it up even in interviews because I don't really want anybody to know. I'm just like, I don't know what it is. It's like maybe I have that old punk rock attitude, which is like I continually want to struggle, and it's something that's hardwired into me that, you know, I can't really purge.
Mm-hmm.